Oh, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to DMS 3000 News Live. This is episode number 30 for Wednesday, July 26, 2023. And I am your host. I'll be hosting today, tomorrow, and on Friday. Be Brandon Martin. And on today's program, we'll be talking about the 72nd anniversary of Alice in Wonderland, the movie, a Disney movie. That'll be at the 5:30 hour. Then at the 6 o'clock hour, we'll be going over the 33rd anniversary of President George H.W. Bush signs the ADA, which we'll get into that once we get to the 6 o'clock hour. And then we'll wrap up the 48th anniversary of the Hustle hitting the number one, to be the song. And then we'll talk about the last 15 minutes of this is an editorial that started last week. And plus the headlines, sports, and what day is today. All that and more. We'll get started with the headlines for Wednesday, July 26, 2023. A tentative agreement between UPS and the Teamsters has averted a potential strike at the company. The deal will secure pay raises for part-time workers. Emergency rooms report when patients visit with health problems caused by heat. Find out when and where rates of illness are spiking and explore trends over the last 5 years. Tonga is just one stop on a tour of the Pacific by Secretary of State Antony Blinken this week. Here is the latest in the parade of U.S. diplomats to visit Oceania in the last year. Consumers should know that medical identity theft can happen, whether from a large-scale breach or theft of an individual's data. The result could be thousands of dollars in medical bills. And we have the coverage of the FIFA Women's World Cup 2023 soccer tournament in New Zealand and Australia. And speaking of that, the U.S. defeated the Netherlands in 2019 for its second consecutive World Cup title. Now the two teams are battling in the group stage as the U.S. looks to shake off a sluggish win over Vietnam. A mural in Washington, D.C. depicts Americans wrongfully detained abroad and fades with time to represent passing days. Neda Shargi's brother Ahmad Shargi, imprisoned in Iran, is one of those faces. The incident is reminiscent of one in September, in which some 200 pilot whales died after a pod stranded itself on a remote west coast of Tasmania, Australia's southeastern coast. The three men were found unresponsive Sunday morning in a privately owned car at a Speedway gas station in Hampstead, North Carolina. Medical authorities pronounced all three dead the same day. The Republican presidential candidate and his campaign team were traveling to an event in Chattanooga, Tennessee, when traffic backed up, causing a 4-car crash. Tuesday marks 26 consecutive days in Phoenix, Arizona, with a temperature over 110 degrees, and it doesn't look like it will let up anytime soon. The conservative group Judicial Watch obtained Secret Service emails complaining about Commander being aggressive. One Bite sent an agent to the hospital. The House Speaker says Republicans may launch an impeachment inquiry in President Biden. House GOP members have been investigating allegations of financial misconduct related to his son, Hunter. The U.S. Marine veteran was freed from Russian prison in a prisoner swap last year. Now he has sustained an injury while fighting in Ukraine, the State Department said. A jury has ordered Amon Bundy and an associate to pay more than $50 million in damages to Idaho's largest hospital after armed protests last year led to a security lockdown. After vaccines became widely available in 2021, the excess death rate among Republican voters was 43% higher than the excess death rate among Democratic voters, Yale researcher says. The new publishing option, which was announced Monday, will allow content creators to combine written content with music, stickers, and hashtags. David Zandstra, 83 years old, has been charged with criminal homicide, first-degree murder, and other crimes. Investigators say he admitted to killing Gretchen Harrington in 1975. And they murdered an 8-year-old girl nearly 50 years ago. Ugh. China is removing its foreign minister, Qin Gang, and reappointing his predecessor, veteran diplomat Wang Yi, to fill the position. The body of Tafari Campbell, 45 years old, was recovered Monday after a 2-day search in Edgartown, Great Pond, near a home owned by the former president and first lady, which is Barack and Michelle Obama. And that was the personal chef. A study finds climate change is making heat waves worse. Protests erupted in Israel after the government passed a law to weaken its judiciary. Biden will designate a national monument for Emmett Till. And then hip hop is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Commentator Kiana Fitzgerald is looking back at the albums that changed the game, which is Curse Blow breaks hip hop nationally with his 1980 debut. And basically, that will be the headlines for July 26, 2023. Now we go on to the sports, as we got the 17 players most likely to be traded before the deadline. And to start off for this one, even though, let's look at, I'm going to make sure, and give me a sec, folks. I know I'm going to be starting Lance Lynn. I want to check and see if it's correct, so stand by a little bit so it doesn't take me that long to do. Load up. There you go. Okay, good. All right. Come on, load up, and I think that'll be right. I'll just, again, stand by for this a little bit. Okay, yes, that is correct. It is Lance Lynn. We'll be going over 3. Lance Lynn, right-handed pitcher of the White Sox. Lynn hasn't been effective in his past 2 starts, but he's a veteran innings eater who can help a contender with a need in the back end of the rotation. The 36-year-old is due roughly $6 million for the remainder of the season, plus a $1 million buyout of his $18 million club option for 2024. So the White Sox might have to pay down the contract to get a decent return. His potential fits are the Los Angeles Angels, the Marlins, and the Tampa Bay Rays. We look at another one, Keynan Middleton, the right-handed pitcher, again, from the White Sox. Middleton was one of the Chicago's most effective relievers over the first 2+ months of the season, posting a 1.27 ERA in his first 23 appearances. He struggled over the past 6 weeks, now at a 6.92 ERA in 14 outings since June 11th. But the 29-year-old has 44 strikeouts in 34 1/3 innings this season and ranks in the top 15% in the league in strikeout percentage, average exit velocity, chase rate, and whiff percentage. Middleton is owed a little more than $300,000 and will be a free agent after the season. His potential fits are the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Marlins, and the Tampa Bay Rays. And now we look at Jordan Montgomery, a left-handed pitcher from the St. Louis Cardinals. When president of baseball operations John Mozeliak said last week that the Cardinals would be trading some players, Montgomery, an impending free agent, owed a little more than $3 million this season, became an instant candidate to be dealt. The 30-year-old has been a reliable rotation option for the past 3 seasons, pitching to a 3.27 ERA in 31 starts since being traded to St. Louis a year ago. And his potential fits are the Phillies, the Rays, and the Red Sox. And we will go over the next 3 tomorrow. And we'll start off with David Robertson to start off on tomorrow's show. However, let's go over the scores that happened from yesterday. It's taking a little time, folks. It's all good. We have the Angels beating the Tigers in the final 10 innings, 7-6. We have the Phillies beating the Orioles 4-3. The Rays beating the Marlins 4-1. The Nationals beat the Rockies 6-5. It is the Subway Series. The New York Mets beating the New York Yankees 9-3. And you know what? I'm going to say it. The Yankees lose. And yes, I had to get it out there. We have the Guardians beating the Royals 5-1. We have the Red Sox beating the Braves 7-1. We have the Mariners beating the Twins, get their win back from yesterday. Actually, not yesterday, but from Monday, actually. 9-7. Back over 1/500 right now. The Astros beating the Texas Rangers 4-3. And the Cubbies beating the Chicago White Sox. Battle Chicago 7-3. The Cubs win that one. The Reds beating the Brewers 4-3. The Padres beating the Pirates 5-1. The Diamondbacks beating the Cardinals with a score of 3-1. The San Francisco Giants beating the Athletics 2-1. And the Los Angeles Dodgers beating the Blue Jays in the final 10 innings 8-7. And we'll go ahead and go over the standings right now in the MLB right now. So far, the Baltimore Orioles in the American League East still holding on to a game and a half over the Rays. Next is, and we got King Kevin Date, if you will. Good afternoon over there in the UK, Kevin. Since it's still morning in the West, I lost weight. Oh wow, that's amazing, there, Kevin. Well done. But yeah, got Blue Jay. Yes, it is the afternoon. Like I mentioned over there in the UK, and that's what I said. So that's all good. As mentioned, the Blue Jays in third, fourth the Red Sox, and the Yankees are in last right now in the American League. The AL Central, Twins still have a 3-game lead over the Guardians. Then next, the Tigers, along with the Chicago White Sox and the Royals. The Rangers are still holding on to a 1-game ahead of the Houston Astros. Then next is the Angels, then the Mariners. They're not too far behind the 1 game. And Oakland Athletics, the usual last place. Look, the National League right now, the Braves have 11-game lead over the Phillies. And we also have the Marlins are not too far behind the Phillies by a half game. Then the Mets and the Nationals. The Brewers still holding on to a half-game lead over the Reds. Then we also have the Cubs next, the Cardinals, and the Pirates. For the NL West, we look at the Dodgers holding on to a 4-game lead over the Diamondbacks and the Giants, and along with the Padres and the Colorado Rockies. And we'll go over the next one, which is basically is what day is today? We have 18 actually, excuse me, I was over by 1, but that's all good. But yeah, 18 holidays that's listed for July 26th. And guys gonna love this one. National Aunt and Uncle Day. It can be like a second set of parents and great friends you are related to. Oh, excuse me. I'm probably gonna need some coffee after this. Oh gosh. But either way, we got Auntie's Day. Learn about how aunties spent their special day with their nieces and nephews. Fiesta de Santa Ana in Nicaragua. In Nicaragua, Fiesta de Santa Ana is a day to pray and party. We also have Holistic Therapy Day. Strengthen your mind, body, and soul and live in a holistic lifestyle this holiday. International Day for the Conservation of the Mangrove Ecosystem. Between land and sea getting hurt by our relentless greed, there stand the mangrove trees. We have Karchi Puja. participate in this festival of worshiping the 14 gods and the earth. Liberia Independence Day. Let's learn what paves the way for African sovereignty and the future of the African continent. Maldives Independence Day. Maldivians all over the world celebrate their independence from the British Empire. National All or Nothing Day. Stop just thinking about something you have been wanting to do and finally doing it. Finally do it. Ooh, this is a good one. National Bagel Fest Day. National Bagel Fest Day is the perfect day to munch on some yummy bagels. National Coffee Milkshake Day. Yummy, yummy, yummy. It's hot. You'll love ice cream, and you can use a caffeinated sugary boost. We look at National Disability Independence Day. Interesting. Get together to spread awareness as we celebrate this significant day in history. We have National Dog Photography Day. National Dog Photography Day is the perfect day to post photos of your beloved pet. National Rebellion Day in Cuba. National Rebellion Day honors the most significant turning point in the Cuban Revolution. Then we also have National Saint Day. Learn the origin of the clan saint, its meaning, and exciting facts about the name. One Voice Day. In today's society, the importance of maintaining world peace is more evident than ever before. You have Tisha B'Av. Let's take a look at why Tisha B'Av is a day of mourning for the Jewish people. And then we look at World Tofu Day. Interesting. People all over the world celebrate one of the most versatile foods known to man. And that's basically it for the What Day Is Today. And we'll go ahead and take our first commercial break. It is 5:23 right now. And when we come back, we will go over the 72nd anniversary of Alice in Wonderland. And we will do that right after this.
Every day I wake up, pour myself a cup of that rich Folgers aroma. The best part of waking up, it's the do-up in all I do. The mountain goat aroma, always coming through. Oh, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Now I'm right in harmony with that do-up ditty. Whoa, one more cup and it's a who-up shabab for me. Oh, the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. Best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
There's a new winner in mustards. In a nationwide taste test, new Hellmann's Dijonnaise Creamy Mustard Blend beat the leading mustard by 2-1.
You know, when I opened up that lunchbox and I saw that my sweetheart had made that ham sandwich with delicious new Hellmann's Dijonnaise, well, I knew I was in love.
Oh, nothing beats new Hellmann's Dijonnaise.
My brother says it's said to be square, and Elio's pizza is square, really. And you break it up, and you stick it in the toaster thing, and tons of cheese goes blub, blub, blub. And the best part about Elio's is my brother has to make it for me. which is very convenient.
Elio's Pizza from McCain. Easier, cheesier, crispier.
And square.
Instant waxed shine as you dust. You've been hearing things like that for years. But is waxing all that instant when you only need to dust? Watch.
With spray wax, you have all this rubbing.
But there's no wax in Endust. It just coats your cloth with tiny beads that trap dust.
You just wipe, and it brings back the shine. Use wax when you have to, sure. But every time you dust, use Endust. It gets rid of dust in half the time of waxing.
I like the way you shine. Baby, it's understood. You're a good time all the time. You make me feel so good. I like the way your sweetness takes me through a thirsty day. You're a welcome sight to see. You're a Washington apple. Bite into the best. A little taste of heaven to me. Washington apples.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, just said your breath's the worst of all.
Brush your breath, brush your breath, brush your breath with Dentine.
Hey, a kiss for charity is really fine, but breath like yours isn't worth a dime.
Brush your breath, brush your breath, brush your breath with Dentine.
Not even mouthwash can freshen your breath more effectively than when you're chewing Dentine.
That baby's cute as a bunny rabbit, but he smelled your breath and let you have it.
Brush your breath, brush your breath, brush your breath with Dentine.
And we welcome you back to DMS 3000 News Live. This is episode number 34, July 26, 2023, 5:27 right now. And once again, I am your host, Brandon Martin. And now, let's go and look at the 72nd anniversary of Disney's Alice in Wonderland movie. And I'm going to go over this bad boy right now. Alice in Wonderland is a 1951 American animated musical fantasy comedy film produced by Walt Disney Productions and based on the Alice books by Lewis Carroll. The 13th release of Disney's animated features. The film features the voices of Catherine Beaumont, Ed Wynn, Richard Hayden, Sterling Holloway, Jerry Colonna, Verna Felton, J. Pat O'Malley. We also have Bill Thompson and Heather Angel. The film follows a young girl named Alice who falls down a rabbit hole to enter Wonderland, ruled by the Queen of Hearts. Along the way, she encounters an odd assortment, including the Mad Hatter, and Cheshire Cat. Ugh, I can't even talk today. That blasted. It's all good. Walt Disney first tried to adapt Alice into a feature-length animated feature film in the 1930s, but were scrapped in favor of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. However, it was eventually revived the idea in the 1940s. The film was originally intended to be a live-action / animated film, but Disney decided it would be a fully animated feature film. During its production, many sequences adapted from Carroll's books were later omitted, such as Jabberwocky, White Knight, The Duchess, and Mock Turtle. When it premiered in London on July 26th, in that date, 1951, and at New York City on July 28th, that was a little bit 2 days after, in 1951, Alice in Wonderland was considered a disappointment on its initial release. Therefore, was shown on television as one of the first episodes of Disneyland. Its 1974 re-release in theaters proved to be much more successful, leading to subsequent re-releases, merchandising, and home video releases. Although the film received generally negative critical reviews on its initial release, it has been more positively reviewed over the years. A CGI animated reboot series, Alice's Wonderland Bakery, premiered on February 9th, 2022. Excuse me. And let's take a look at the plot. In a park in England, a young girl named Alice with her cat, Dinah, listens distractedly to her sister's history lesson and begins daydreaming of a nonsensical world. She spots a passing white rabbit in a waistcoat who panics of being late. Alice follows him into the burrow and plummets down a deep rabbit hole. Upon landing in a place called Wonderland, she finds herself facing a tiny door whose handle advises drinking from the bottle on a nearby table. She shrinks to an appropriate height, but has forgotten the key on the table. She then eats a cookie that causes her to grow excessively exasperated, but by these changes of state, she begins to cry and floods the room with her tears. She takes another sip from the bottle to shrink again, and rides the empty bottle through the keyhole. As Alice continues to follow the rabbit, after encountering a caucus race, she encounters numerous characters, including Tweedledum and Tweedledee, who recount the tale of the walrus and the carpenter. Alice tracks the rabbit to his house. He mistakes her for his housemate Marianne and sends her inside to retrieve his gloves. While searching for the gloves, Alice finds and eats another cookie and grows giant, getting stuck in the house. Thinking her a monster, the rabbit asks the dodo to help expel her. When Dodo it decides to burn the house down, Alice escapes by eating a carrot from the rabbit's garden, which causes her to shrink to 3 inches tall. Continuing to follow the rabbit, Alice meets a garden of talking flowers who initially welcome her with a song, but then banish her. Believing that humans are a type of weed, Alice then encounters a caterpillar smoking who becomes enraged at Alice after she laments her small size, which is the same as caterpillars. After which the caterpillar turns into a butterfly and then flies away. Before leaving, the caterpillar advises Alice to eat a piece from different sides of a mushroom to alter her size. Following a period of trial and error, she returns to her original height and keeps the remaining pieces in her pocket. In the woods, Alice gets stuck between multiple paths and encounters the mischievous Cheshire Cat, who suggests questioning the Mad Hatter or the March Hare to learn the rabbit's location, but is unhelpful in giving directions. Taking her own path, Alice encounters both alongside with the Dormouse in the midst of an unbirthday tea party celebration. The Hatter and the Hare ask Alice to explain her predicament, to which Alice tries, but becomes frustrated by their interruptions and absurd logic. As she prepares to leave, the rabbit appears and the Hatter attempts to repair his pocket watch, which results in its destruction. Alice attempts to follow the rabbit after he is ejected from the premises, but decides to go home instead. Unfortunately, her surroundings completely change, leaving her lost in the forest, and she begins to cry along with many forest creatures, which vanish. The Cheshire Cat reappears to the despondent Alice and offers a path to the hot-headed Queen of Hearts, the only one in Wonderland who can take her home. In the Queen's labyrinthine garden, Alice witnesses the Queen, whom the rabbit serves as a chamberlain, sentencing a trio of playing cards to decapitation for painting mistakenly planted white rose bushes red. The Queen invites a reluctant Alice to play against her in a croquet match in which live flamingos cart guards. Excuse me. I had to do that though, so sorry about that. Where was I? Oh, yes. And hedgehogs are used as equipment. The equipment rigged the game in favor of the Queen. The cat appears again and plays a trick on the Queen, setting up Alice to be framed. Before the Queen can sentence her to decapitation, the King suggests a formal trial. I was about to say former, but it's all good. At Alice's trial, the cat invokes more chaos by having Alice point him out, causing one of the witnesses, the Dormouse, to panic. As the Queen sentences Alice to decapitation, Alice eats the mushroom pieces to grow large, momentarily intimidating the court. Oh, excuse me. However, the mushroom's effect is short-lived, forcing Alice to flee through the deteriorating realm with a large crowd in pursuit. When Alice reaches the small door she sees herself sleeping through the keyhole. Alice emerges from her dream and she returns home for tea with her sister. We look at the voice cast: Catherine Beaumont as Alice, Edwin as Mad Hatter, Jerry Colonna as March Hare, Richard Hayden as Caterpillar, Sterling Holloway as Cheshire Cat. We also look at J. Pat O'Malley as Tweedledum and Tweedledee, also along with Walrus and Carpenter and Mother Oyster. Bill Thompson as White Rabbit / Dodo / Pat. Heather Angel as Alice's sister. Joseph Kearns as Doorknob. Larry Gray as Bill the Lizard. Queenie Leonard as Bird in the Tree / Snooty Iris. Dink Trout as King of Hearts. Doris Lloyd as Red Rose. Jimmy McDonald as Dormouse / Flamingo. The Mellowmen of Thury, Ravenscroft, Bill Lee, Max Smith, and Bob Hamlin as the Card Painters. Don Barclay as the Card Soldiers. Lucille Bliss as the Lazy Daisy / the Tulips. Pinto Colvig as the Flamingos. Jimmy and Tommy Lusky as the Young Pansies. We also have Marnie Nixon as the Singing Flowers. Norma Zimmer as White Rose. Erdman Penner as the Eagle. And then Ken Beaumont as the Card Painter. We look at directing animators. Mark Davis, Alice and the Eyeglasses Creature. Milk Call, the Dodo, Alice, Flamingo, Hedgehog, White Rabbit. Eric Larson, Alice, Dinah, Caterpillar, Cheshire Cat, Queen of Hearts, and Flamingo. Frank Thomas, the Doorknob, Queen of Hearts, Wonderland Creatures. Ollie Johnston, Alice, King of Hearts. Ward Kimball, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. The Walrus and the Carpenter, Oysters, Cheshire Cat, Matt Hatter, March Hare, and Dormouse. John Lounsbury, Flowers, Caterpillar, Cheshire Cat, Matt Hatter, March Hare, Wonderland Creatures. Wolfgang, I can't even talk. That blast. It's all good. Wolfgang Reitherman. We look, we're at White Rabbit, the Carpenter, the Dodo, Mad Hatter, and March Hare. Les Clark, Alice, Wonderland Creatures. And Norm Ferguson, the Walrus and the Carpenter. We'll look at the production. Walt Disney was familiar with Lewis Carroll's Alice books, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1865, and Through the Looking Glass in 1871, and had read them as a schoolboy. In 1923, he was a 21-year-old aspiring filmmaker working at a Laugh-O-Gram studio in Kansas City, making the unsuccessful short cartoon series by the name of Newman Laugh-O-Grams. Last of Newman Laugh-O-Grams was called Alice's Wonderland, which was loosely inspired by the Alice books. The short featured a live-action girl, Virginia Davis, interacting with the animated world. Faced business problems, however, the Laugh-O-Gram studio went bankrupt in July 1923, and the film was never released to the general public. However, Disney left for Hollywood and used the film to show to potential distributors. Margaret J. Winkler of Winkler Pictures agreed to distribute the Alice comedies, and Disney partnered with his older brother, Roy O. Disney, and rehired Kansas City co-workers, including Ub Earworks, Rudolph Ising, Friz Freleng, Carman Maxwell, and Hugh Harman, to form the Disney Brothers Studios, which was later rebranded Walt Disney Productions. The series began in 1924 before being retired in 1927. In 1933, Disney considered making a feature-length animated and live-action version of Alice starring Mary Pickford. However, these plans were eventually scrapped in favor of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, mainly because Disney was put off by Paramount's 1933 live-action adaptation, Alice in Wonderland. However, Disney did not completely abandon the idea of adapting Alice, and in 1936, he made the Mickey Mouse cartoon Through the Mirror, a cartoon where Mickey Mouse goes through a mirror and into a place where all the items in the house are alive. In 1938, after the enormous success of Snow White, Disney bought the film rights of Alice in Wonderland with Sir John Tenniel's illustrations and officially registered the title with the Motion Picture Association of America. He then hired storyboard artist Al Perkins and art director David S. Hall to develop the story and concept art for the film. A story reel was completed in 1939, but Disney was not pleased. He felt that Hall's drawings resembled Tenniel's drawings too closely, making them too difficult to animate, and that the overall tone of Perkins' script was too grotesque and dark. Realizing the amount of work needed for Alice in Wonderland, and with the economic devastation of World War II and the production demands of Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi, Disney shelved production on Alice in Wonderland shortly after the screening. In fall 1945, shortly after the war ended, Disney revived Alice in Wonderland and hired British author Aldous Huxley to rewrite the script. Huxley devised a story in which Lewis Carroll and Alice Liddell, the inspiration for Alice, which misunderstood and persecuted following the book's publication. In Huxley's story, stage actress Ellen Terry was sympathetic to both Carroll and Liddell, and Queen Victoria served as the Deus Ex Machina, validating Carroll due to her appreciation for the book. Disney considered child actress Margaret O'Brien for the little role. However, he felt that Huxley's version was too literal. An adaptation of Carroll's book, background artist Mary Blair submitted some concept drawings for Alice in Wonderland. Blair's paintings moved away from Tenniel's detailed illustrations by taking a modernist stance, using bold and unreal colors. Walt liked Blair's designs, and the script was rewritten to focus on comedy, music, and the whimsical side of Carroll's books. Around this time, Disney considered making a live-action and animated version of Alice in Wonderland, similar to his short Alice comedies, that would star Ginger Rogers and would utilize the recent developed sodium vapor process. Lisa Davis, who later voiced Anita Radcliffe in 101 Dalmatians, and Luana Patton were also considered for the role of Alice. However, Disney soon realized that he can only do justice to the book by making an all-animated feature, and in 1946, work began Alice in Wonderland. Film tentatively scheduled for the release in 1950. Animation crews on Alice in Wonderland and Cinderella effectively competed against each other to see which film would finish first. By early 1948, Cinderella had progressed further than Alice in Wonderland. A legal dispute with Dallas Bower's 1949 film version was also underway. Disney sued to prevent release of the British version in the U.S., and the case was extensively covered in Time magazine. The company that released the British version accused Disney of trying to exploit their film by releasing its version at virtually the same time. For writing, through various drafts of the script, many sequences that were present in Carol's book drifted in and out of the story. However, Disney insisted that the scenes themselves keep close to those in the novel, since most of its humor is in the writing. One omitted scene from 1939 treatment of the film occurred outside of the Duchess Manor, where the fish footman is giving a message to the frog footman to take to the Duchess, saying that she is invited to play croquet with the Queen of Hearts. Alice overhears this and sneaks into the kitchen of the manor, where she finds the Duchess cook maniacally cooking and the Duchess nursing her baby. The cook is spraying pepper all over the room, causing the Duchess and Alice to sneeze and the baby to cry. After a quick conversation between Alice and the Duchess, the hot-tempered cook starts throwing pots and pans at the noisy baby. Alice rescues the baby, but as she leaves the house, the baby turns into a pig and runs away. The scene was scrapped for pacing reasons. Another scene that was deleted from the later draft occurred in Toogley Wood, where Alice encountered what appeared to be a sinister-looking Jabberwocky hiding in the dark, before revealing himself as a comical-looking dragon-like beast with bells and factory whistles on his head. A song, Beware of Jabberwock, was also written. However, the scene was scrapped in favor of the Walrus and the Carpenter poem, out of desire to keep the Jabberwocky poem in the film. It was made to replace an original song for the Cheshire Cat, I'm Maud. Another deleted scene in Toogley Wood shows Alice consulting the White Knight, who was meant to be somewhat a caricature of Walt Disney. Although Disney liked the scene, he felt it was better if Alice learned her lessons by herself, hence the song Very Good Advice. The trial scene at the end of the film was edited with Alice being accused of teasing the Queen during a game of croquet, rather than the Knave of Hearts being accused for stealing tarts the Queen made. Other characters, such as Mock Turtle and the Griffon, were discarded for pacing reasons, though they would later appear alongside Alice in some commercials. In an effort to retain some of the Carol's imaginative poems, Disney commissioned top songwriters to compose songs built around them for use in the film. Over 30 potential songs were written, and many of them were included in the film, some for only a few seconds. The greatest number of songs of any Disney film. In 1939, Frank Churchill was signed to compose songs, and they were accompanied by a story reel featuring artwork from David S. Hall. Although none of his songs were used in the finished film, the melody of Lobster Quadrille was used for the song Never Smile at a Crocodile in Peter Pan, which came out 2 years after the film's release. When work on Alice resumed in 1946, Tin Pan Alley songwriters Mac David, Al Hoffman, and Jerry Livingston began composing songs for it after working on Cinderella. However, the only song by the trio that made it into the film was the Unbirthday Song, which he was composing songs in New York. Sammy Fain had heard that the Disney studios wanted him to compose songs for Alice in Wonderland. He also suggested lyricist Bob Hillard as his collaborator. The two wrote 2 unused songs for the film, Beyond the Laughing Sky and I'm Odd. The music of the former song was kept, but the lyrics were changed, and it later became the title song for Peter Pan, The Second Star to the Right, by April 1950. Fain and Hilliard had finished composing songs for the film. The title song, composed by Sammy Fain, has become a jazz standard, adapted by jazz pianist Dave Brubeck in 1952 and included on his 1957 Columbia album Dave Digs Disney. The song In a World of My Own is included on the orange disc of Classic Disney, 60 Years of Musical Magic. And basically there is the information, the soundtrack and Camerata version. You got all the songs on there, the release, marketing, the home media, box office, critical reaction, accolades, stage version, and many more references, the spin-off, the theme parks, video games, cover versions. And yeah, that's basically all that covers for the 72nd anniversary of Alice in Wonderland. It is now 5:53 right now, and we'll go ahead and take another commercial break. And when we come back, we will go over the 33rd anniversary of President George H.W. Bush signs the ADA. And what does the ADA stand for? You'll have to tune in to find out, as we'll do that right after this.
Its name of origin is Theobroma, food of the gods, but we know it as chocolate. This may be the first time you've seen natural chocolate, and this may be the first time you've really tasted it. Breyers all-natural ice cream. Nothing artificial, just fresh milk, real cream, pure sugar, so that true chocolate taste really comes through. Breyers ice cream. It's like tasting chocolate for the first time.
My health club always had Pert Plus in the locker room. It cleans, conditions. It's great. Then one day they switched. This one said it had conditioner in it, but my hair told a different story.
Some 2-in-1s don't lather as well or leave hair feeling as clean. Others don't fully condition. But Pert Plus's microbead conditioner leaves hair clean and completely conditioned.
So now when I go to my club, my Pert Plus goes with me.
Pert Plus. There's no 2-in-1 like this one.
What's this?
Married 6 months and already your wife's using spaghetti sauce for the jar?
It's okay, Pop. This is Prego.
Prego, listen to me. The ingredients of a successful marriage. Garlic.
It's in there.
Little bits of real herbs and onions for that homemade taste.
Pop, look, it's in there.
And you need...
Whoa, huh?
It's in there.
100% natural Prego spaghetti sauce. Homemade taste. It's in there.
Enjoy extra sugar-free gum.
You get extra flavor, extra fun, in extra sugar-free gum.
Extra, the only leading sugar-free gum with NutraSweet, gives you extra refreshing flavor that lasts an extra long time.
Extra flavor for that extra long play. Extra flavor for that extra long day. When you chew it extra, the extra fresh flavor lasts an extra long time.
Extra last, extra long.
Birch, beech, maple, hickory. America's great hardwood trees. They help make smoked sausage made on the Hillshire Farm, America's great tasting smoked sausage. Hillshire Farm uses its own special blend of hardwood chips from these great trees to slowly, gently, delicately smoke its sausage right on the farm. They do it the old-fashioned way to give you all the flavor you want in a smoked sausage. That's how Hillshire Farm makes America's great tasting smoked sausage in Polska kielbasa.
And we welcome you back to DMS 3000 News Live. It is 5:56 right now, close to 4 minutes away from now, 3 minutes away for 6 o'clock. Once again, I am your host, Brandon Martin. And we'll go over right now the 33rd anniversary of President George H.W. Bush signs the ADA. And you're going to ask yourself, what does the ADA stand for? Well, I'll go ahead and tell you this right now. It is Americans with Disabilities Act. And I'll go ahead and read what that is. Which he signed that 33 years ago. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. It affords similar protections against discrimination to Americans with disabilities as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which made discrimination based on race, religion, sex, national origin, and other characteristics illegal, and later sexual orientation and gender identity. In addition, unlike the Civil Rights Act, the ADA also requires covered employers to provide reasonable accommodations to employees with disabilities and imposes accessibility requirements on public accommodations. In 1986, the National Council on Disability had recommended the enactment of the Americans with Disabilities Act and drafted the first version of the bill, which was introduced in the House and Senate in 1988. A broad bipartisan coalition and legislators supported the ADA, while the bill was opposed by business interests who argued the bill imposed costs on business. Excuse me. And conservative evangelicals who oppose protection for individuals with HIV. The final version of the bill was signed into law on July 26, 1990 by President George H.W. Bush. It was later amended in 2008 and signed by President George W. Bush, which changes effective as of January 1st, 2009, which came about close to 19 years ago. Later. ADA disabilities include both mental and physical medical conditions. A condition does not need to be severe or permanent to be a disability. Equal Employment Commission regulations provide a list of conditions that should easily be conducted to be disabilities. Amputation, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder, blindness, cancer, cerebral palsy, deafness, diabetes, epilepsy, human immunodeficiency virus or HIV. I'll just say that more often. Intellectual disability, formerly termed mental retardation, major depressive disorder, mobility impairments, often requiring a wheelchair, multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is schizophrenia. Other mental or physical health conditions may be disabilities, depending on what the individual's symptoms would be in the absence of mitigating measures, medication, therapy, assistive devices, or other means of restoring function. Excuse me. During an active episode of the condition, if condition is episodic, certain specific conditions that are widely considered antisocial or tend to result in illegal activity, such as kleptomania, and I'm not going to say that word, just say that word, I'm not going to say, exhibitionism, voyeurism, etc., are excluded under the definition of disability in order to prevent abuse of the statute's purpose. Additionally, sexual irritation is no longer considered a disorder and is also excluded under the definition of disability. However, in 2022, the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit stated that the ADA covers individuals with gender dysphoria, which may aid transgender people in accessing legal protections they otherwise may be unable to. We look at the titles, though. Oh, man, it's going to be a lot. So we'll go Title 1, which is employment. The ADA states that a covered entity shall not discriminate against a qualified individual with a disability. This applies to job application procedures, hiring, advancement, and discharge of employees, job training, and other terms, conditions, and privileges of employment. Covered entitles include employers with 15 or more employees, as well as employment agencies, labor organizations, and joint labor management committees. There are strict limitations on when a covered entity can ask job applicants or employees disability-related questions or require them to undergo medical examination, and all medical information must be kept confidential. Prohibited discrimination may include, among other things, firing or refusing to hire someone based on a real or perceived disability, segregation and harassment based on a disability. Covers entitles are also required to provide reasonable accommodations to job applicants and employees with disabilities. A reasonable accommodation is a charge in the way things are typically done that the person needs because of disability and can include, among other things, special equipment that allows the person to perform the job, scheduling changes, and changes to the work assignments are chosen or communicated. An employer is not required to provide an accommodation that would involve undue hardship, excessive difficulty, or expense, and the individual who receives accommodation must still perform the essential functions of the job and meet the normal performance requirements. An employee or applicant who currently engages in illegal use of drugs is not considered qualified when a covered entity takes adverse action based on such use. Excuse me. There are many ways to discriminate against people based on disabilities, including psychological ones. Anyone known to have a history of mental disorders can be considered disabled. Employers with more than 15 employees must take care to treat all employees fairly and with any accommodations needed. Even when an employee is doing a job exceptionally well, they are not necessarily no longer disabled. Employers must continue to follow all policies for disabled people. Part of Title I was found unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court as it pertains to states in the case of boards of trustees of the University of Alabama versus Garrett. Excuse me. As violating the sovereign immunity rights of the several states as specified by the 11th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The court determined that state employees cannot sue their employer for violating ADA rules. States employees can, however, file complaints at the Department of Justice or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who can sue on their behalf. We look at Title number 2, Public Entities, and of course, public transportation. Title 2 prohibits disability discrimination by all public entities at the local level, e.g., school district, municipal, city, or county, and at state level. Public entities, I can't even say, damn it. Sorry about that. Must comply with Title II regulations by the United States Department of Justice. These regulations cover access to all programs and services offered by the entity. Access includes physical access described in the ADA standards for accessible design and programmatic access that might be obstructed by discriminatory policies or procedures of the entity. Title II applies to public transportation provided by public entities through regulations by the U.S. Department of Transportation. It includes the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, which is the Amtrak, along with all other commuter authorities. This section requires the provision of paratransit services by public entities that provide fixed route services. ADA also sets minimum requirements for space layout in order to facilitate wheelchair securement on public transport. Title II also applies to all state and local public housing, housing assistance, and housing referrals. The Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity is charged with enforcing this provision. To look at Title number 3, Public Accommodations and Commercial Facilities. Under Title III, the individual may be discriminated against on the basis of disability with regards to the full and equal enjoyment of the goods, services, families, facilities, I almost about to say families, but or accommodations of any place of public accommodation by any person who owns, leases, or operates a place of public accommodation. Public accommodations include most places of lodging, such as inns and hotels, recreation, transportation, education, and dining, along with stores, care providers, and places of public displays. Under Title III of the ADA, all new construction, modification, or alterations after the effective date of ADA, approximately July 1992, must be fully compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act accessibility guidelines found in the Code of Federal Regulations at 28 CFR Part 36 Appendix A. Interesting. Title 3 also has applications to existing facilities. One of the definitions of discrimination under Title 3 of the ADA is a failure to remove architectural barriers in existing facilities, which you can see at 42 USC. This means that even facilities that have not been modified or altered in any way after the ADA was passed still have obligations. The standard is whether removing barriers is readily achievable, defined as easily accomplished without much difficulty or expense. The statutory definition is readily achievable, calls for a balancing test between the cost of the proposed fix and wherewithal of the business and / or owners of the business. Thus, what might be readily achievable for a sophisticated and financially capable corporation might not be readily achievable for a small or local business. There are exceptions to this title. Many private clubs and religious organizations may not be bound by Title III. With regard to historic properties, those facilities must still comply with the provisions of Title III of the ADA to the maximum extent feasible. But if following the usual standards would threaten to destroy the historic significance of a feature of the building, then alternative standards may be used. Under 2010 revisions of Department of Justice regulations, newly constructed or altered swimming pools, wanting pools and spas must have an accessible means of entrance and exit to pools for disabled people. However, the requirement is conditioned on whether providing access through a fixed lift is readily achievable. Other requirements exist based on pool size, include providing a certain number of accessible means of entry and exit, which are outlined in Section 242 of the standards. However, businesses are free to consider differences in the application of the rules depending on whether the pool is new or altered, or whether the swimming pool was in existence before the effective date of the new rule. Full compliance may not be required for existing facilities. Section 242 and 1009 of the 2010 standard outline such I can't even talk, dang it. Sorry about that, guys. My word. Such exceptions. There we go. The ADA provides explicit coverage for service animals. Guidelines have been developed not only to protect persons with disabilities, but also to identify businesses from damages related to granting access to service animals on their premises. Businesses are allowed to ask if the animal is a service animal and ask what task it is trained to perform, but they are not allowed to ask the service animal to perform the task nor ask for a special ID of the animal. They cannot ask what the person's disabilities are. A person with a disability cannot be removed from the premises unless either of two things happen. The animal is out of control and its owner cannot get it under control, or the animal is a direct threat to people's health and safety. Allergies and fears of animals would not be considered a threat to people's health and safety, so it would not be a valid reason to deny access to people with service animals. Businesses that prepare or serve food must allow service animals and their owners on the premises, even if state or local health laws otherwise prohibit animals on the premises. In this case, businesses that prepare or serve food are not required to provide care or food for the service animals, nor do they have to provide a designated area for the service animal to relieve itself. Lastly, people that require service dogs cannot be charged an extra fee for their service dog or be treated unfairly, for example, being isolated from people at a restaurant, people with disabilities cannot be treated as less than other customers. However, if a business normally charges for damages caused by the person to property, the customer with a disability will be charged for their service animals' damages to the property. The ADA provides explicit coverage for auxiliary aids. And how's it going, Diggs? By the way, 7. And good morning to you. Hopefully you are doing well on this Wednesday. Even though I didn't see it, but that's all good. Auxiliary aids and services are items, equipment, or services that assist in effective communication between a person who has a hearing, vision, or speech disability and a person who does not. ADA says that the public accommodation shall take those steps they may be necessary to ensure that no individual with a disability is excluded, denied services, segregated, or otherwise treated differently than other individuals because of the absence of auxiliary aids and services. Unless the public accommodation can demonstrate that taking those steps would fundamentally alter the nature of the goods, services, facilities, privileges, advantages, and accommodations being offered and would result in an undue burden. i.e., significant difficulty or expense. The term auxiliary aids and services includes 1. Qualified interpreters on site or through video remote interpret, or VRI for short. Services, note takers, real-time computer-aided transcription services, written materials, exchange of written notes, telephone handset amplifiers, assistive listening devices, assistive listening systems, telephones compatible with hearing aids, closed caption decoders, open and closed captioning, including real-time captioning, voice, text, and video-based telecommunications, products and systems, including text telephones, video phones, and caption telephones, or equally effective telecommunications devices, video text displays, accessible electronic and information technology, or other effective methods of making a rally delivered information available to individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. Qualified readers, tape texts, audio recordings, braille materials, and displays, screen reader software, magnification software, optical readers, secondary auditory programs, large print materials, accessible electronic and information technology, or other effective methods of making visually delivered materials available to individuals who are blind or have low vision, acquisition or modification of equipment or devices, and lastly, other similar services and actions. Captions are considered one type of auxiliary aid. Since the passage of the ADA, the use of captioning has expanded. Entertainment, educational, informational, and training materials are captioned for deaf and hard of hearing audiences at the time they are produced and distributed. The Television Decoders Circuitry Act of 1990 requires that all televisions larger than 13 inches sold in the United States after July 1993 have a special built-in decoder that enables viewers to watch closed caption programming. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 directs the Federal Communications Commission to adopt rules requiring closed captioning of most television programming. The FCC's rules on closed captioning became effective January 1st, 1998. Title IV of the ADA amended the Landmark Communications Act of 1934 primarily by adding Section 47 U.S.C. This section requires that all telecommunications companies in the U.S. take steps to ensure functionally equivalent services for consumers with disabilities, notably those who are deaf or hard of hearing and those with speech impairments. When Title IV, in fact, in the early 1990s, it led to the installation of public teletypewriter machines and other TDD. Title IV also led to creation in all 50 states and the District of Columbia of what was then called dual-party relay services and now are known as telecommunications relay services, such as STS relay. Today, many TRS mediated calls are made over the internet by consumers who use broadband connections. Some are video relay service calls, while others are text calls. In either variation, communication systems translate between the signal or typed words of a consumer and the spoken words of others. In 2006, according to the Federal Communications Commission, VRS calls averaged 2 million minutes a month. And then Title V includes technical provisions. It discusses, for example, the fact that nothing in the ADA amends, overrides, or cancels anything in Section 504. Additionally, Title V includes an anti-retaliation or coercion provision. The Technical Assistance Manual for the ADA explains this provision. 3.6000 retaliation or coercion. Individuals who exercise their rights under the ADA and or assist others in exercising their rights are protected from retaliation. The prohibition against retaliation or coercion applies broadly to any individual. The entity that seeks to prevent an individual from exercising his or her rights or to retaliate against him or her for having exercised those rights. Any form of retaliation or coercion, including threats, intimidation, or interference, is prohibited if it is intended to interfere. And yeah, and that's basically it. They got the history, drafting, lobbying, support and opposition from religious groups, opposition from business interests, capital crawl, the final passage, ADA Amendments Act in 2008, web content accessibility guidelines in 2019, the impact, accessibility, you got employment, societal attitudes, professional plaintiffs, got case law, everything else, that's all what it shows. And that's basically it regarding to the 33rd anniversary of President George H.W. Bush signs the ADA. And we all know that is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Yeah. With that, we'll go ahead and take one more commercial break. And when we come back, we will go over the 48th anniversary of the Hustle hitting the #1. And we'll go ahead and do that right after this.
At the river mouth, the bears catch only the tastiest, most tender salmon. Which is exactly what we at John West want. John West endured the worst to bring you the best.
Hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. Sadly, he isn't me. But if he stopped using lady-scented body wash and switched to Old Spice, he could smell like he's me. Look down. Back up. Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like. What's in your hand? Back at me. I have it. It's an oyster with 2 tickets to that thing you love. Look again. The tickets are now diamond. Anything is possible when your man smells like Old Spice and not a lady. I'm on a horse.
Ship my pants? Right here? Ship my pants, you're kidding. You can ship your pants right here. You hear that? I can ship my pants for free.
Wow, I just may ship my pants.
Yeah, ship your pants. Billy, you can ship your pants too.
I can't wait to ship my pants, Dad.
I just shipped my pants, and it's very convenient.
Very convenient.
I just shipped my drawers.
I just shipped my nightie.
I just shipped my bed. If you can't find what you're looking for in store, we'll find it at Kmart.com right now and ship it to you for free.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory thoughts. Our unification as wolves is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Mr. Cow.
Yes?
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I don't know. I always end up biting. Ask Mr. Fox, for he's much cleverer than I.
Mr. Fox, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
Why don't you ask Mr. Turtle, for he's been around a lot longer than I. Me, I bite.
Mr. Turtle, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
I never made it without biting. Ask Mr. Owl, for he is the wisest of us all.
Mr. Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
A good question. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3.
If there's anything I can't stand, it's a smart owl.
How many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? The world may never know.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice. Be around. That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world is smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
So you think Santa will like these red and green M&Ms?
I don't know. I never met the guy. He does exist.
They do exist. Santa?
Santa. But even though we're getting really close and closer to the end of July, it is under 1 minute before we hit 6:30. We are back for DMS 3000 News Live. This is episode number 30 for July 26, 2023. And again, I'm Brandon Martin, your host. And let's go over the 48th anniversary of The Hustle hitting number 1. And you're going to ask yourself, what is that song? I'll go ahead and say this right here and right now. All right, let me making sure it's all good. Sorry about that. Just had to take a message, but I'll just look at the others later. But for now, let's go back to what we're talking about. The Hustle is a disco song by songwriter/arranger Van McCoy and the Soul City Symphony. It went to number 1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and Hot Soul Singles charts during the summer of 1975. It also peaked at number 1 on the Canadian RPM charts, number 9 on the Australian Singles chart, and number 3 in the UK. It would eventually sell over 1 million copies. The song won the Grammy Award for Best Pop Instrumental Performance early in 1976 for songs recorded in 1975. Let's look at the history of this. While in New York City to make an album, McCoy composed the song after his music partner, Charles Kipps, watched patrons do a dance known as the Hustle in the nightclub Adam's Apple. The sessions were done at New York's Media Sound Studio with pianist McCoy, bassist Gordon Edwards, drummer Steve Gadd, keyboardist Richard T., guitarist Eric Gate, and John Tropea, and orchestra leader Gene Orloff, producer Hugo Peretti, contracted multi-woodwind player Phil Bodner to play the piccolo lead melody. On the week of May 16, 1975, The Hustle entered the radio and records trend chart at number 38. The following week, The Hustle entered the radio and records pop/30 chart at number 30. During the summer of 1975, The Hustle became a number 1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 and Hot Soul Singles chart. Billboard ranked it as the number 21 song for 1975. It also peaked at number 9 on the Australian Singles chart and number 3 in the US. Why did I say US? Oh my gosh! In the UK Singles chart. There we go. Excuse me. Continuing on. According to producers Hugo and Luigi, who own the Avco record label that originally released The Hustle, McCoy met with them shortly before his death in 1979 to discuss ideas for a new, longer version of the song in order to appease Avco's UK and German affiliates who were clamoring for a 12-inch disco single release. The new version, clocking in at just under 6.5 minutes, was assembled posthumously as a remix using parts of the original recording plus new parts, including drum and syndrome and a little Moog synthesizer. It was credited to Van McCoy alone or with an unnamed orchestra. Mixed by the Mix Masters, DM's more BMS. DMS, me more BMS. Well, I'm not too sure if they will allow that there, Kevin, but you would have to talk it up to David, so. I'm just trying to do my job here as just host of DMS 3000 News Live. And I know you're kidding, but hey. It's all Brandon Martin show. Oh, man. That's funny. Okay, though, yeah. Identity unknown. The song has been featured in numerous movies such as Stuck on You, Vampires Suck, The Lorax, and television shows including The Shark Tale, short film, Club Oscar, That 70s Show, Speechless, American Dad, and Futurama. And we look at the weekly charts. Australia, we all know, the 9th. Austrian singles chart, 13th. Belgium singles chart, number 3. Canada, number 1. An RPM top singles. Canada RPM adult contemporary, number 1. Dutch top 40, number 4, though. French singles chart, 32. German singles chart, 3. Ireland, 5. New Zealand singles chart, 5. South Africa, 5. Spain, 1. For Los 40 Principales. UK singles chart, 3. US Billboard Hot 100, 1. US Billboard Hot Soul Singles, 1. US Billboard Adult Contemporary, 2. US Cashbox Top 100, 1. Year-end charts, 78th ranked in Australia. Canada, 9th. 19th for New Zealand. 16th in UK. US Billboard Hot 100, number 21. And US Cashbox is 18th. Certifications and sales. Canada with the gold certification of 35,000 units / sales. Japan, 500,000. United Kingdom with the silver certification, 250,000. United States gold, 1 million. We do have other versions, as Talco made the rap cover of The Hustle, released in 1983 of Babalu Records, and Filipino Rufa May Quinto covered this song as Booba. Why did I say Booba? It's Booba. There we go. That's much better. Which is Do the Hustle, which served as the theme song for the 2001 film Booba. Her version was included on her album Rated R from Viva Records. And that's basically it for the 48th anniversary of The Hustle hitting the number 1 by one Van McCoy. However, we go ahead and go on with, this is an editorial. Basically, things we want to talk about of whatever to give us, and we read that editorial. We read of what it says, and we'll give basically our thoughts of it, our take of what it says. We look at this. Florida public schools need a fair process for book challenges. Should parents in Pinellas or Hillsborough counties want their child's school books selected by residents of Pahokee or Palakta? Should school superintendents be removing books unilaterally behind closed doors without public input? Should elected school board members wipe their hands of this responsibility and cede these decisions to parents and staff? And should political appointees in Tallahassee be allowed to have the final say? Of course, the answer to all these questions is no. But these absurdities are happening or are opposed to thanks to the circuits that Florida Republicans have created out of book bans and local control of the public schools. School districts across the state are scrambling to inoculate themselves as a small band of parents and conservative activists seek to remove structural materials and they deem objectionable. Their efforts are fueled by new state laws pushed by Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and the GOP-dominated legislature that restrict lessons on race, gender identity, and sexual orientation, and that look to give parents more control over school operations. The net effect is that school districts are self-censoring books without cause, due process or public recourse. Pinellas County recently evaluated 87 books selected for review by local educators. While all were approved for use, anti-censorship. I can't even talk. Sorry about it, guys. My goodness. Anti-censorship organizations complained the district targeted materials without having received any objections to them. In Leon County, Superintendent Rocky Hanna removed 5 titles from schools recently at the urging of the conservative group Moms for Liberty. And his staff has said many books previously used in courses could be re-examined. Districts are taking widely varying approaches to book bans, confused over how to interpret Florida's crackdown on certain topics, and fearful of political controversy. Many elected school boards are targeting books in piecemeal fashion or opting to pass the responsibility on to staff and parents. The Pinellas School Board said this week that it would have leaked decisions on books to a committee of parents and staff appointed by the superintendent. The board also agreed that the superintendent and staff would be authorized to remove books from schools regardless of whether any formal objections were filed. By contrast, Hillsborough's board wants more clarity from the state, even though at least one board member, Patty Rendon, has suggested reviewing complaints over books whether a formal challenge was filed or not. This preemptive rush to appease serves the purpose of removing books from circulation while allowing the governor and his allies swipe their hands of culpability, and its promises to only get worse. The Department of Education is compiling a list of materials moved statewide for all Florida districts to consider. And lawmakers approved another provision that took effect July 1st that enables parents to appeal a school board's decision on books directly to the state. School districts need a process that adheres to state law, but there's also a clear, uniform, methodical, and fair. Removing books without a challenge denies everyone the right to defend a title. It invites abuse, prevents a paper trail that makes accountability impossible, and weakens a school district's defense that it acted lawfully. The goal here should be keeping, not removing, as much educational material as possible. Incredible that it needs saying, but that's the whole point of having schools. And that's basically the editorials that are institutional voice of the Tampa Bay Times. Well, it's not just Florida needing a fair process for book challenges. It's all over the states. All over. Not, like I said, it's not just Florida. Unless the parents and the school board decides which books that are not allowed to be on schools, like of whatever that is, like for educational purposes, you're going to have those things of what to have allowed and what not to allow. And it's going to be a really, really good question to see. Like I said, it's not just Florida. It's every state in general of that school district itself, from every state. You have to keep that in mind. Like I said, it's not Florida. It's everywhere in the U.S. And basically, for like certain topics of what does not to be covered on, for what the teachers are going to be talking about in their doing their prepping and all that, and basically like talking over to another teacher who is doing like the same subject as them and giving them a lecture. It's going to be really interesting to see what it goes from there. It really does. But only time will tell. You know, I'm not going for both sides. I'm just staying neutral as I am. For whether basically needing a fair process for book challenges. Part of me saying I would go for it. The other part of me is saying I would not go for it. But again, it can go either way of which state. It really depends on where you're at. Not like I said, it's not just Florida. It just depends on where you're living in of that certain state you're coming from. And also varies the topic of what you're going to try to talk about. And if there's things that you cannot talk about because of that book ban, you would have to do something else. Then you would have to talk it over and discuss what it is for a new lecture. And that's basically it. For me, it could go either way. That's just my personal take about that. I mean, I don't know what's going to be from there, but yeah. I think that will do for DMS 3000 News Live for July 26, 2023. And coming up in about 13 minutes, I will go ahead and have this have the hands over to the Snowman in the Morning with Cole Johnson to talk about whatever they're talking about in the world of sports. Then later on will be another episode of Super Password of Season 2, which, speaking of which, we're going to be in the we're going to have a finals taping this coming Monday to see who will become the Season 2 Super Password champion. But like I said, I'm not going to give out any details. Once that released and comes out with that, then you'll get the answer from there. Then you got the Brian Snow Show. You also got another one that comes up into mind, which let me go ahead and take a look at there. It shouldn't take that long. And that's basically Jay's Retro Toys and Games. And that'll do it. So with that, I will see you guys tomorrow for episode 31. And let you know if I do a promo on that one. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. And we'll let you know if I'm gonna have some topics along the way. I'll just again make up on the fly. But either way, I'm Brandon Martin, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning for DMS 3000 News Live. So with that, have a great morning, everybody. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Advertising Network for great more content like this one.